So Netflix and Nintendo want to make a live-action TV series out of Zelda. Alright, that's going to be a fun thing to speculate wildly about until Nintendo inevitably gets cold feet and pulls the plug because Kyoto's not 100% on board with every decision. Seriously, they had one bad experience. Oh, shut up. These were perfectly serviceable cartoons, and then they just closed the book on doing movies? That was a mistake. That's like if Marvel had said they weren't going to make any movies after that one bad Fantastic Four movie, and those other two bad Fantastic Four movies, and that thus far pretty bad-looking Fantastic Four movie. Look, the point still stands. When you consider how few video game characters have crossed over into an even quasi-mainstream notoriety outside of Nintendo franchises, it's pretty damn staggering. If Disney or DreamWorks owned something as merchandisable as even Kirby, we'd have seen like 12 movies of that by now. But instead, we're living in a world where Lara Croft has been in at least one more live-action feature films than Samus Aran, Kirby, Kid Icarus, Star Fox, and the Super Mario Bros. Combined. And Lara Croft wasn't even that interesting until they rebooted her. Hell, do you realize we're getting a movie where Adam Sandler fights Pac-Man, Centipede, and Donkey Kong before a proper Mario Bros. Movie? That's insane. That's like if Spawn got a movie before Spider-Man, the X-Men, Green Lantern, and Wonder... Okay, that was a bad example. All kidding aside, this excites me. I'm the guy who's been ready to mark out for live-action Nintendo movies for as long as he can remember, but this sounds like a promising idea anyway. The general mid-range quality of made-for-streaming genre shows and the reasonable expectations that come with it makes it a fine test kitchen for the notoriously risk-averse Nintendo, and Zelda is probably the perfect place to start, all things considered. And not just because it's a fantasy franchise and thus far they were able to allegedly pitch it as a family-friendly Game of Thrones. When you look at the Nintendo catalog, Zelda is probably the easiest to find a way into. I mean, Metroid is pretty bizarre apart from the stuff that's just aliens again, and the Mario Brothers are so arch you'd need to build a personality and story from the ground up. But Zelda? Here's the hard truth, folks. Zelda's pretty easy as far as adaptational interpretation goes. The main thing unifying the franchise is a total of 3 characters and 1 MacGuffin. Everything else comes down to the design and the recurring features of Hyrule. Beyond that, damn near any high fantasy plotline would fit just fine so long as things like the Master Sword, Moblins, Octoroks, and whatever else look more or less like they did in some of the games. You could pretty much reskin Willow with Zelda stuff and you'd have a perfectly serviceable Zelda movie, or at least a starting point for one, and it's not like the original game, having at one point been based on Ridley Scott's legend, is an enduring, if patently untrue, urban, legend about the series for no reason. They do share a lot of incidental similarities, and it'd be another easy swap. Now don't get me wrong, it'll be fun for fans to try and hash out who should play who and which version of the Zoras might show up, or if it'll be Ganondorf or classic Pig Ganon, or whether franchise favorites like Impa, Lon Ranch, the Gerudo, the Gurons, Spectacle Rock, the Ocarina, Midna, Navi, the Kokiri, the Deku Tree, Epona, Linebeck, etc. will show up, so long as there's a guy named Link, a girl named Zelda, a quest for something called a Triforce, and a heavy with Ganon somewhere in his name, they'll pretty much be nailing it from at least a story perspective. I'm not trying to run down the series here. The malleability of this franchise is a feature, not a bug, and you have to imagine it's part of the appeal here. It's been 20 years since Hercules and Xena, 15 years since Lord of the Rings, and Game of Thrones is still going strong. Extended-length adventures in high fantasy settings is something the film and television industry knows how to do pretty solidly at this point. Hell, I wonder if they'll shoot in New Zealand, Ireland, or somewhere else, or are they going to go for one of those Hollywood tax credit things where Hyrule will look alternately like Southern California, Louisiana, or a green screen. Either way, color me on board for now. The possibilities of this are pretty great for both the gaming and TV film mediums, but most excitingly for gaming. Call me a fanboy all you want, but if the thus far dismal state of the console gaming and big-scale originality industry-wide in this quote-unquote new generation has reaffirmed one thing for me, it's that video games will be a deeply, perhaps irredeemably dismal place if Nintendo ever decides to pull up stakes and leave. And with sales numbers of the Wii U still not doing what they need to be doing, if turning their vast stable of characters and franchises into a multimedia push a la Marvel Studios is what it takes to keep the last great holdout of gaming's golden age viable and still producing new games, I'm more than all for it, friend. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.